So ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to a brand new DC Studios news video. And today we are doing another dive. And yes, I mean a deep dive on top of the previous deep dive. And what I mean by that is we're a day or two after that DC Studios press update. And you can look at this as a part 2 to my previous video. But this one I want to say is, believe it or not, more comprehensive because I have combed over and over all of the details that have popped up after that initial dump. And in various different corners of reporting, there's some quotes and interesting tidbits that I kind of saw, and I was like, why wasn't this reported by the major trades as something, you know, that I would view as pretty big, or just something I would love to sink my teeth into in discussion in a video like this regarding DCU Batman, Clayface, Matt Reeves' Batman, the next project that Gunn is working on, you know, all kinds of updates that weren't really put out there forefront and center. Now, I'm not trying to overhype this, but I will still say there is actually more that you may not have heard about that we're going to get into in this video. And I really do mean that. So I recommend watching the whole video because each timestamp that you can skip around on if you want to is just as interesting as the other to me. And what we're going to start off on right away is Gunn teasing the next project of his that nobody knows about, and also regretting putting certain writers on certain projects. Like, that's the kind of, you know, nuggets that I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting. So let's dive into that. Then we're going to get into some DCU Batman, Reeves Batman, and then a bunch of other DCU project updates. So this comes from comicbook.com, and Gunn said, I mean, life is complicated. There's always little things. Like, I wish I did that differently. I wish I asked David Corenswet to do that take differently. It's just like little things. There's writers that we put on projects that I wish we didn't. But overall, I feel just so lucky. I mean, the fact that Ana Noguera was on Supergirl, came out with this great script, the fact that there's another, my favorite project nobody even knows about yet. It's been my favorite project for a few months. Nobody even knows it. So he gives us a little update clearly about how, you know, life is complicated. And, you know, say what you will about James Gunn. Again, whether you love him, dislike him, or just somewhat middling, you have to give it to the guy. He's been insanely busy. But getting to the meat of this, there's a couple of comments in that paragraph I just read out, which is super intriguing. So we're going to talk about the writers on projects that he kind of regrets in just a second. But we also had this from the Nerds of Color Q&A with regards to Gunn's next thing. And they say, when asked about his next project in the DCU, Gunn stated, I'm writing something else now that would be the next directing thing. It's connected to Superman. So is that quote related to the quote before in where he said, my favorite project, well, there's another, my favorite project nobody even knows about yet? Maybe. Now, I've seen a lot of people, let's just assume hypothetically those quotes are related. I say hypothetically because obviously he could be doing his next thing and also really excited about a whole separate other project. But he said what he's writing is connected to Superman. So if it's not the Brave and the Bold he's writing, because, you know, that's not connected to Superman, at least based on the premise that we have for the movie, then if it's still connected to Superman, then it could very well be what people are also suggesting, and that is a World's Finest movie, or perhaps even something likened to that of a Trinity project involving all three of Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman. Now, I know what people are already thinking when it comes to suggestions like that. You know, this sounds like BVS, but I will say, to be fair, like, if this was a similar approach, I imagine it would be tonally incredibly different, but I would absolutely question introducing characters like Wonder Woman or Batman in this project first. Let's just hypothetically assume this comes out before Brave and the Bold, just like the DCEU did before they even got their own solo movies. Sure, Superman has his solo movie, but it's just like Man of Steel and then BVS where Batman and Wonder Woman come in. There will be endless comparisons to, hey, Snyder was the blueprint and stuff like that. I don't know, though. This is ultimately all conjecture, but this comes down to the quotes, obviously, where he's got a favorite project that apparently nobody knows about, and it's been his favorite project for a few months, and also that he is writing his next thing that would also be his next directing thing, and it's connected to Superman. So let me know any and all thoughts you have there. But as for the writers that they put on projects that he wishes he didn't, it really makes you wonder what that surrounds. And the obvious go-to projects that it could surround are the ones that aren't exactly working out that we've learned of recently, such as Waller, but mainly The Authority. And also, I keep seeing people say, why are you saying Waller? I'm British. I'm not American. I don't say American Boba mode. Waller. It's Waller over here, mate. Waller. Look, I get it. But accents are a thing. I say water. You guys say water. Why don't you pronounce the T's? I know I pissed off 80% of my subscriber base there. But back on track here. I mean, obviously, this could pertain to anything with regards to what Gunn is saying, things that we don't get to see behind the scenes. But on that subject, Collider, interestingly, had this to say. When asked if plans change, as they inevitably do, for the Gods and Monsters era of the DCU, if that also includes switching the format in which a story is presented. And Gunn says there's been discussions about, one thing in particular changing to animation. Well, ladies and gentlemen, which DCU movie had a rumor back in November about it being reworked into an animated movie instead? You guessed it, The Authority. Now, that's not confirmed, and wasn't confirmed back then, but it is from a reliable source. I will definitely back up Apocalyptic Horseman from Nexus Point News. I know many of you probably already know who that is. But anyway, you hear this, and it's like, okay, you connect that to maybe the writer comment. Maybe he feels like maybe we shouldn't have put writers on that to try and write a movie like that if we've got to retool it into an animated movie. I do want to stress, this might not be the project he's on about, but obviously this speculation feels like we're going in the right direction. But we're going to have to wait and see if The Authority is going to pick up steam later on, maybe in the animated format. Moving on. My God, we've only got through a couple of things here. This is going to be a long video. Thank you for joining me. If you're still here, by the way, which I hope you are because there's so many more good things to come, I would really appreciate a like on this video. Thank you so much for supporting the content. And hey, double check that subscribe button just in case you think you're subscribed, but you might not already be. Around about 52% of you who come back to regular videos aren't actually subscribed, yet you keep coming back. But DCU Batman and the Batman. This is what I mean about getting different bits and nuggets from different places out there with regards to news about DCU Batman, the Brave and the Bold news soon. And also doubling, if not tripling down on how Matt Reeves' Batman, is separate while talking about Clayface. And if you don't believe me, it really does seem in multiple different quotes here that you couldn't really spell it out even more. And I know some people are like, but we already know this. James Gunn said that they're not connected. It's always been this theory won't die until a DCU Batman is cast. I truly believe that. But it is great to get and hear these words in February of 2025. Do you know what I mean? So anyway, Gunn added that it's certainly not the plan to merge Matt Reeves' Batman universe with the DCU, despite a fondness for Pattinson and his Dark Knight. We love him, but we've got to introduce a Batman into the DCU, said Safran. It's imperative, and so that's the plan with the Brave and the Bold. And by the way, that in of itself is really interesting. The fact that they're like, look, we love Pattinson, but we've got to introduce a Batman into the DCU. It's imperative, means that they're speaking even more confidently about how those two are separate. And this could even tie into what I'm about to talk about with how, maybe maybe not Brave and the Bold, but a DCU Batman could be coming quicker behind the scenes than what any of us truly realize. And they might not wait for Matt Reeves or not when it comes to the Batman 2. Not saying that the Batman 2 won't happen, but as they said, it's imperative to them to get the main heavy hitters out there. However, having said that, if Batman is so imperative and Superman is imperative as they've, started the DCU with Superman outside of Creature Commandos, what is with the silence on Wonder Woman? Are you telling me that no one at this press event asked about the possible future Wonder Woman plans? I mean, maybe they were told that's a no-go. I really don't know. Again, maybe they did. Maybe they didn't get an answer. Maybe that's why it wasn't worth reporting. I don't know. There's probably kinds of things that they can or can't do that we don't even know about. Now, to get back on track, because you know me, I keep going off track, but I can't help it. Doubling down on the Batman stuff. I love hearing this. Like, again, guys, take this in if you are a Pattinson DCU merger believer. Look, and again, clip this, please, for one day if they change their minds. I'm all about that. But listen to this. The only thing that's Elseworlds is Matt Reeves' world, Safran continued. His crime saga that he's telling, the Batman Trilogy, the Penguin series, that's what's in that lane. So still under DC Studios, still under us, we have an incredible relationship with Matt, but those are the only things. It was important that Clayface be part of the DCU. It's an origin story for, you know, a classic Batman villain. And guys, it gets even better. Like, to nail that hammer in the coffin, Gunn says, Clayface, Gunn added, is very outside of the grounded, non-super metahuman characters in Matt's world. Emphasis on that quote, please. Clayface, which is a DCU movie, is very outside of the grounded, like, as I've always said, as Matt Reeves has said, this is why I've gone on about it, and people are like, no, but well, it's still possible. Well, Matt Reeves has always said, how about we unwind that? Because while our version is comics faithful, it's not the comics faithful one where you get those fantastical Mr. Freezes and stuff like that. So, you know, as I've said, as Matt Reeves has said, it's grounded, non-super metahuman characters. If you are to see a fantastical character, it would be an unwound, like you would unwind that fantastical and be like, how can we actually make that character work in our universe? And you get the best of both worlds when we get our all-out DCU fantastical Batman. I love that, right? You got your own Batman thing over here with Matt Reeves, and then, oh man, I've talked about this enough before, but I am so happy that through like 2 or 3 different quotes here, Gunn and Safran have just kind of been like, yes, separate. Not only is it separate, not only is it in its own lane, but hey, DCU Clayface is outside the, you know, non-super powered, non-metahuman characters in Matt Reeves' world. Like, how much more descriptive words and explanations do people need to gather that Pattinson's Batman isn't merging? Oh god, I'm gonna go insane. Like, it actually makes me almost go Dragon Ball Z, like, supercharged, you know. Now, to interject here, because I've seen a lot of people say, hey, Boba, did you see that Peter Safran confirmed the Batman Trilogy? Well, I wouldn't hang on to that so much. I think that's Safran talking a lot more loosely. I think, as I've always said on this channel since 2017, 2018, whenever it was, that the Batman is intended to be a trilogy. However, you can't guarantee a trilogy. Please don't think we're getting 3 movies automatically. In today's day and age in Hollywood, you still need a good box office for Part 2 to warrant Part 3. As I always say, with my favorite example, if The Batman Part 2 made Shazam! Fury of the Gods money, absolutely not. You're not getting a Part 3. But I don't think that will happen. It should still make enough money to get a Part 3. The days of making movies like the Lord of the Rings, Peter Jackson trilogy, where it was borderline unheard of even back then to, like, greenlight 3 movies to film back-to-back in a row, not knowing if, like, it was gonna even do good. Yeah, you're not gonna get that with the Batman Part 2 and Part 3, and I've seen some people speculate, are they gonna shoot Part 2 and Part 3 back to back? Like, that would be amazing, but nah, they're not gonna do that, especially in today's climate, if you will. So up next with DC Batman, there is one thing that was said that just kind of baffles me in the way that it was answered by Peter Safran. Now, as usual, I want to be fully transparent. This is just the way I'm taking it. I'm trying to look at multiple interpretations, but let me know what you think about what I'm about to say. So the Nerds of Color at the Q&A reported this. When asked if the release date push for the Batman Part 2 would affect the release date for Batman the Brave and the Bold, Safran joked, well, we announced that October 2026, there will be a Batman movie. So, by the way, first of all, I don't know if this is like a misquote, because, you know, the Batman Part 2 is coming out in October 2027. So is he saying here that the original release date, you know, because don't forget the Batman Part 2 got pushed by a year from October 2026 to October 2027. And Safran is saying here, like, Safran joked, well, we announced that October 2026 there will be a Batman movie. Is he still saying that there's going to be a Batman movie? So a DCU Batman? Are they actually fast-tracking the Brave and the Bold, like people are speculating about, especially with what Gunn has said, that he himself is working very closely on the Brave and the Bold, and if anything, according to outlets, guys, the driving force of the title? I can honestly go in so many different directions here, because right now I am looking at it in the lens of, well, the way the question frames it, because I've seen people look at this in multiple ways, but they're asking if that release date push from 2026 to 2027 for the Batman Part 2 would affect the Brave and the Bold. He's like, well, okay, you know, basically the way I'm reading this, Part 2, yeah, 2027, okay. But, you know, we announced that October 2026, there will be a Batman. Did we say it was Part 2? But the thing is with all of this, the whole idea or theory that the Brave and the Bold could release in October 2026, it is quite a rapid pace to the point of where I really don't think that could happen. I mean, they still need to finish the script, despite Gunn saying he's, you know, being the driving force or the charge behind that. Then they would need to do casting, pre-production, filming, and then post-production all before October 2026. Like, they would have to kind of go balls to the wall right now if they wanted that to happen. So that whole theory doesn't really add up to me, but again, what Safran said here is still kind of not super clear. There's technically another angle you can look at this all in, which I'm not going to dive super deep into, in how when Peter Safran said that, he meant to say 2027. So, well, we announced that for October 2027, that there will be a Batman movie. Well, that would be pretty concerning, because if he meant 2027, well, we know that's the Batman Part 2's release date. And why wouldn't he just outright come out and say, well, no, yeah, you're right. As Matt Reeves said, they should be filming the third quarter of this year, 4 to 5 months of shooting, being generous, and then a year's worth of post-production. That sets them up beautifully with time to spare for easily them to achieve the October 2027 release date. If he really meant October 2027 here, that, well, we announced there would be a Batman movie, and for it to not be the Batman Part 2, that would be catastrophically incomprehensible to me as to why it would be the Brave and the Bold instead. Because honestly, that movie, like, say what you will about Matt Reeves and the Batman Part 2, because I know some people in the comments are going to be like, it's going to get pushed again. I really do feel like, guys, don't forget, they're filming at the end of this year. So with all of that being said, without me going round and round in circles here, let me know what you think of what Peter Safran said. I mean, you're seeing on screen right now, when being asked if the release date push for the Batman Part 2 would affect the release date for Batman the Brave and the Bold, Safran joked, well, we announced that October 2026, there will be a Batman movie. Could it be something like World's Finest? A sequel to Superman? Maybe Batman comes in, it tides DCU Batman fans over until they pursue Brave and the Bold. I really don't know. And I almost somehow forgot to include this in the video, but we also had Gunn saying, I'm very, very actively involved in that script. That's referring to, obviously, Batman that we already went over. But Safran teased more on the Brave and the Bold will be announced very soon. Now, I don't know what that means. I really don't know what that means, because I don't know, like, this is basically the first time we've had a DC press update thing like this since 2023 when it first got announced. I don't see necessarily us hearing anything at CinemaCon that's really going gung-ho about Superman marketing, the official trailer release. So I don't know. Maybe it's going to be a major trade article, right? Saying, hey, like, the script for The Brave and the Bold has been done and we're finally ready to announce the writer as James Gunn. But no, really, maybe somebody else. And that maybe they're going to ramp up into production sooner rather than later, as per what people were wondering about. But yeah, more news on The Brave and the Bold will be announced very soon. Can't pull it from my memory banks properly, but I do remember Peter Safran saying very soon once before, and then like a whole year went by. So, you know, I just wanted to put this out there. I bookmark it that we could be hearing something about The Brave and the Bold, but at the same time, you know, just subscribe to the channel with the notifications on, because I'll be talking about it. Moving on, and kind of having spoken about Clayface, IGN presents some really interesting tidbits here. So they say, at various points in the DC Studios presentation, Safran called Clayface experimental, in the sense that it is not your traditional superhero tentpole movie. And an indie-style chiller, Gunn called Clayface pure effing horror, like totally real. Their version of that movie, it is so real and true and psychological and body horror and gross. And that is music to my ears. Absolutely music to my ears. I know some people are concerned about the $40 million budget, but that is really music to my ears because, as I've said, to kind of like round up what my idea is for what they're doing in terms of execution for Clayface, is that just like The Fly, which is inspiring Clayface, you see the transformation happen over time. And we all know how amazing prosthetics are, right? So by the end of the movie, you will get that Clayface you see in Creature Commandos, a very body horror type Clayface. But again, I've used examples like Smile, how they built these really intricate prosthetics. I can imagine Clayface body horror. Like, they're talking body. Imagine a mouth stretching and dissolving, mixed in with some VFX elements there. But you save the full blob moments for later on. Plus, you know, if you give VFX artists enough time, it's actually not as expensive as people think. Like, it's 200 million just on VFX. No, like, if you give VFX artists enough and you use it sparingly at impactful moments in the movie, then yeah, they can easily achieve a blob monster DCU Clayface in a $40 million budget movie. But what I'm so excited for is the mix of both practical prosthetics and VFX there that could be used, like CGI rather. And as they continue to say here, this summer, cameras are going to roll on Clayface, an incredible body horror film that reveals a compelling origin of a classic Batman villain. And this is another title that we added to the slate on the strength of an exceptional screenplay by Mike Flanagan. I think some of you are probably aware that we're in negotiations with James Watkins now to direct, and we'll start casting this as soon as we have the director deal done, and we'll shoot this summer. It's slated for a full 2026 release. Clayface might not be as widely known as the Penguin or the Joker, but we really feel that his story is equally resonant, compelling, and in many ways, more terrifying than one of those. Now, Gunn goes on to confirm here that Clayface is, perhaps unsurprisingly, definitely R-rated. I mean, absolutely. Again, music to my ears. And Gunn even goes on to say here, I think that one of the things Peter and I talked about when we first got the script is if we were producing movies 5 years ago, when we were doing Belko Experiment and all of that stuff, and somebody had brought us this horror script called Clayface about this guy, we would have died to have produced this movie because it was just a really excellent body horror script. And the fact that it's in the DCU is just a plus. But here's where things get, I don't know if I want to say confusing, but it's definitely been something that people have talked about with regards to just where will the Clayface movie be set? And it could really end up being both locations here. So, deadlines say this about the movie location. The story is set in Hollywood and New York City. Regarding whether Clayface could shoot in Hollywood, Safran admitted, it's a tough question. However, Peter Safran also said to the Wrap here, it fits nicely within the DCU, and it takes us into the world of Gotham, Safran added. So the opportunity to make a horror movie for DC was kind of like a gift. So I was really excited for Clayface, well, for all of these reasons, but also in how it may very well, as we understand, be coming before The Brave and the Bold, since it's releasing in 2026. And I was like, hey guys, this is a DCU live-action Gotham we're seeing before the actual Batman movie itself. I know people have, like, issues with that, but without getting into all of that, like, on the table here, that's still pretty cool. We would be seeing a live-action Gotham. But then some people are like, hey, you know, One Bad Day Clayface is in Hollywood, and then we have, you know, deadlines saying it's set in Hollywood and NYC. So, like, that kind of sounds like, obviously, not New York City and DC, but maybe Gotham. But then, yet, you're also saying Hollywood, so is it set in Hollywood? But then we have Peter Safran saying it takes us into the world of Gotham. Like, it nicely fits within the DCU and takes us into the world of Gotham. So I'm assuming both. Like, you could have Clayface, like in One Bad Day, go from Gotham to Hollywood, because this is an origin. So instead of the comic book already, you know, Clayface is Clayface, I think maybe he goes from Gotham to Hollywood, terrible things happen, and maybe like One Bad Day, Batman eventually catches up with him, being like, dude. Either way, this is encouraging to me without rambling on about this one. I know you guys, I see the comments. I appreciate you saying you love the ramble. Thank you. But with this one, I'm just glad to hear Peter Safran say, and it takes us into the world of Gotham. So there you have it. At least some part of Clayface will be in Gotham, whether it's at the beginning and the end, or whether it's not at the beginning because he's in Hollywood, but he just gets taken to Gotham, like Arkham, because of his crimes, or, you know, I know he's not being portrayed as villainous or as typically villainous in the comics, but as I said, I think this body horror, tragic thriller origin story that Mike Flanagan wrote will put this person into a situation where bad things happen. But then again, as I keep saying to you guys, in Creature Commandos, he wasn't exactly the greatest guy. He was still happy enough to, you know, pretend to be Professor McPherson, a woman who was murdered in Creature Commandos on behalf of Princess Alana Rostovic, who was going to take over the whole world. So was Clayface on board of that? Or did she not divulge that part of the plan to him? Do you see what I mean? So, like, no matter what, at one point in the future, compared to this origin movie, Clayface is, like, just because these articles are saying that it's not, like, he's not going to be as villainous or antagonistic as what we know in the comics initially in this movie, or whatever, it doesn't mean that he's the greatest guy. Anyway, moving on, one last thing about the Clayface news here, and I've got more to cover in. I know there's news out there, by the way, people. I know, but we're doing a news roundup, hopefully on Friday, where I can catch up with some of the more recent stories. But what I will put into this is that supposedly Daniel Radcliffe is rumored to be eyed to play Basil Karlo in James Watkins' Clayface. Now, this is coming from Jeff Snyder's The Snyder Report. Say what you will, grain of salt. But it did kind of make me just wonder if this is floating out there, because James Watkins, you know, the director of Clayface, also shot The Woman in Black with Daniel Radcliffe. But you never know. Like, it could actually be based on something legitimate. It's not like director team-ups or re-team-ups don't happen. So Radcliffe, this could be true. And how would you feel about that? For me, initially, it didn't feel right. But again, I like to kind of sit with something, and I wouldn't hate it. I feel unsure about it, but I feel like Daniel Radcliffe, you know, has kind of proved that he is a lot more versatile of an actor than what people think. Like, a lot of people, when you have roles like Harry Potter, I mean, even look at Robert Pattinson with Twilight. He went on for a decade after that to do all these different movies to, like, shed that skin from him because it sticks to you like Peter Pan's shadow, right? It's the same thing with Harry Potter, if not way worse with Daniel Radcliffe. People just can't separate it, so they think, Harry Potter? Clayface? But no, I think it could work. I just need to think about it a bit more, maybe absorb a bit more of Daniel Radcliffe's work in the past several years. But I do want to stress, it is just a rumor for now. But one thing I do want to add on top of that is that Apocalyptic Horseman did say, for the record, Clayface casting is on pause because James Watkins still hasn't officially signed on to direct yet. And that lines up with what Peter Safran and Gunn said, you know, that Watkins is going to have input on it. And so I wouldn't trust any casting rumors for now. So again, take that as you will with regards to the Daniel Radcliffe stuff, but let me know any fan casts you actually do have for this Clayface movie that we're going to be hearing casting about pretty soon because it's shooting this summer. Now, as for Superman tidbits from Nerds of Color here, Gunn was then asked about upcoming ensemble films and whether Superman would be considered an ensemble movie. I do not think of Superman as an ensemble film. It's about 3 characters: Superman, Lois, and Lex. Those are the 3 characters. Everybody else serves that story. Every single frame of the movie is about Superman's story. Like, it's about his personal journey. It isn't Guardians of the Galaxy. Every character has their arc, like I would have in any story, but it really is about Superman. This is something I've been saying for a while with, the amount of characters in Superman. Like, look, don't get me wrong. If the movie comes out and, like, it really is less focused on him, that is a criticism I will join those of you who have that criticism in. However, it may sound like ridiculous because I've seen people say that about this comparison, but Oppenheimer is a movie about Oppenheimer, but you have supporting characters in it that help serve the story of Oppenheimer. All Gunn is doing here is that you have the main characters, the main villain, Lex, the main, like, Lois Lane and Clark Kent, Superman. There's other characters in it in where I do initially agree in concept, because I haven't seen the movie, so I don't know if it's going to be proved to be the case, that as Gunn said, how can I tell a part of, like, you know, you've got the Daily Planet side of Clark Kent's life, Perry White, Lois, Jimmy, Ma and Pa Kent, etc., but on Superman's side, in a living, breathing DCU, he has his metahuman compatriots. And in a living, breathing DCU with all of these things going on, all of these projects that we're going to see come to fruition, hopefully, right? You would have these other heroes out there who might swoop in. And if Gunn does that in a way he says, and where it serves the story, it really isn't what some people are making it out to be. But there's so many examples out there where those movies are still about that character. But this is what I mean about the DCU. I feel like for a lot of people, it's very hard to go in with good faith criticism, or like have the lens of looking at it in good faith. There's always this negative kind of, oh no, there's this man, oh no, God, oh, that's going to be bad. It's never like the nuanced or like level-headed look at it. Hey, maybe this makes sense here, but it could be bad this way. We're going to have to wait and see. That other movies or other franchises don't come under that level of scrutiny from in the first place. And I'm not saying, to emphasize here, that this isn't deserved in the sense of how Warner Brothers previously and the DCEU made their bed and they now have to lay in it, so to speak. And it's up to James Gunn and DC Studios and Peter Safran to get them out of this bed and prove to people to have that good faith. But I do feel like going in with that outlook and perspective all the time, well, it can't always yield in the most representative truth of the matter. By the way, I'm rambling again. So when asked about reshoots and test screenings for Superman, Gunn informed us, we've done test screenings. We've done real screenings. Definitely learning stuff all the time. Definitely editing and making little changes. You know, we might shoot a couple of little tiny things. All my additional photography is so hard because it's like, I used to be kind of against it because, you know, you don't want to have to shoot again. It's a pain in the ass, but as time has gone on and I've made more movies, I really like being able to say, you know what, I wish I had a shot of that fist hitting Nat, and so I do tend to go back and pick that kind of stuff up. So it wouldn't be anything major, but those kinds of things, yeah, I'll cover you a couple more things like that. Now this all harkens back to like all rumored screenings for Superman. There's just some more little tidbit perspective there, but as for the Superman trailer, Safran stated, we're cutting it now. It's really a first trailer because if the first one was a teaser, this will be a 2.5-minute teaser for what Superman is going to be. But we're into that now. And I think what he's trying to say there is like, the first one was just a teaser, right? It's meant to just be like, okay, this is our first kind of look, but you don't really get like a proper vibe of the story. Sure, you can have channels like myself that go into it and hey, Lex is trying to dismantle Superman. But the official trailer, what he means is like now you'll actually get a 2.5-minute teaser for what Superman is going to be. I've made a whole separate video on this, on things that I want to see in the next trailer. You will get dialogue. Dialogue really gives you like a whole other flavor of feel of the movie and the characters and the story they choose to present to you in the cut in what edit they're doing right now for that official trailer. So they're doing that right now. We're most likely, I don't see why we would get it before, but most likely going to get it at CinemaCon on April 1st when the Warner Brothers panel is happening. So look forward to that. Up next, we have some Supergirl tidbits from the Nerds of Color. Safran continued talking about Lobo's appearance in Supergirl. It's one of the fun things about working with Craig Gillespie. He's just been such a great collaborator on creating Millie's look and Jason's look and Matthias Schoenaert's look. It's been fun. And I say Matthias because I've got a friend called Matthias, but I know when I say that, people are like, Boba, it's Matthias or whatever, okay? Either way, I want to see Millie's Supergirl look soon. But maybe we're not going to get... I mean, we did learn that they're halfway through filming, which is insane. Maybe when production is done, they might be like, yay, we did it. And then you have, like, Millie Alcock standing there as Supergirl. But to be fair, they might not give us too much of a look at Supergirl until after Superman releases. Not saying that they're going to like proper compete amongst each other just because a picture or video of Supergirl, Millie Alcock in the Supergirl suit comes out, but ideally they want all eyes on Superman in the most positive way they can get it. Sure, they want that positivity for Supergirl, but like, you know, if you can like kind of stretch it out a little bit before showing Lobo and Supergirl as we get closer to Superman and let that have its like full time in the spotlight, I think maybe maybe there might be something like that to it, but hey, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Let me know your own thoughts there, any expectations on when to actually see the suit. But as for Peacemaker Season 2, they give us a few tidbits here about a new theme song, but also what Season 2 is, more about this time round. So Gunn says, I don't know. For the first season, we totally kept that from the public until the first episode aired and it flipped people out, which was the most fun about it. Now, people know it's coming. So it's not as exciting in that respect. But I went through a lot of permutations of potential songs that I was going to have it open to, including reusing the Season 1 song, but doing a different dancing to Do You Want to Taste It? But then we ended up with something else that I think works. And I think the second season is much more about the characters and the interconnectivity between the characters and their personal lives. And it's more about Chris Smith than it is about Peacemaker. And so I think that the song reflects that overarching theme. So I really like what I'm hearing there. I think for Season 2, it's a natural progression from the team starting off as this like, okay, we have to work together to stop this alien invasion, to becoming really like tear-jerkingly for the audience, attached to one another. So Season 2, going more into that, great. Getting more connected. Like we even had today a little teaser of John Economos from James Gunn. And it's not much, but you just see Economos there with Leota Adebayo, Waller's daughter, obviously. And I'm not saying they're on a date or anything like that. I'm just saying like they seem to just be like sharing a beer or a meal. And I love the idea that these two, as per what we're reading here, could be just getting to know each other more, hanging out outside of a mission. Or maybe this is what they're doing until they're waiting to get radioed in by Peacemaker. And also getting more into Peacemaker makes tons of sense with regards to this season's story, the development that he went through in Season 1, also being confronted by Rick Flag Sr. for killing Rick Flag Jr., which, Peacemaker wasn't super happy about doing. I like what I'm hearing, super happy that it's coming out in August. Cannot wait for that trailer. And also, really intrigued to see what this new opening dance is and to what song. Because how do you top Do You Want to Taste It? That was kind of like a lightning in a bottle moment. And one of the best show intros and most funny show intros I've ever seen. To the point of where it really wasn't hyperbolic for people to say, this is one of the only shows, if not the only show intro, I don't skip. And Peter Safran said, I would say it's the only song that you sent us. So maybe they are quite indeed set on whatever the heck it is. Now up next, Sgt Rock has some tidbits out of this Q&A. So we have here them saying, but Luca had this ability to tell a really compelling story about heroism in a time of armed conflict. And they had a really interesting take. He and Justin Chirisk butchered that, on how to tell this story within the DCU. And so we love the idea of being able to tell something that's a war movie, so it's a different genre, but then Clayface is a different genre, and Superman is different. And to be able to tell all these stories within the DCU, that's why we're so excited about what we're doing. We're not just serving one audience. Not every movie has to be for everyone, but we want to have something for everyone. I feel like the approach they're doing, at least on paper, business-wise, you're getting Superman, you're getting Batman relatively soon, but you're getting these other projects where this will be a war movie, but in the DC Universe. And it would be super different to what Superman will be. I've gone on about this so many times, but I feel like this formula, I don't see why some people don't understand why there is a sense to it, because some people act, I'm not saying you have to love it or the projects that they've announced, but to act like they don't know what they're doing at all. Like, again, if you're a really big horror fan, or you like body horror, or you just, you even like are obsessed with going to see the latest type of Conjuring movie, you might go see Clayface without even knowing it's a DC movie. A lot of people in the audience, they might do that about a war film that is set in World War II, where GI robots around, and possibly the Justice Society. There's so many cool things they can do here that I am hoping come to fruition in the best way. I mean, that's all we can hope as DC fans, that they deliver. So speaking on that front about tones, when asked about what the identity of DC Studios will be, and this even links into what we're about to talk about next with Lanterns, Gunn went on to say, so I'm watching the dailies of Lanterns the other day, and it's so different from Superman. Superman is this big spectacle superhero film that has its own tonal style. Guy Gardner is ridiculous. And then we have lanterns, which is so grounded and gritty, you know? And then we have Supergirl, which is this sort of beautiful but gritty science fiction film. Then we have Clayface, pure effing horror. It is so real and true and psychological and body horror gross. Each of those things are totally different, and that's what I find fun for me. Now, up next with some more Lanterns tidbits here. This one was interesting because when asked if Lanterns was inspired by any specific comic story, the way that Supergirl was inspired by Tom King's run, Gunn stated, no, it's more like Tom doing a version of Lanterns the same way that he did Woman of Tomorrow, the same way he did Mr. Miracle, or in the same way he did my favorite, Strange Adventures. Lanterns is 8 episodes, and it could easily be a continuing series, and I will just say that. You know, we are incredibly fortunate to have Tom King, Chris Mundy, and Damon Lindelof at the helm. Those guys are just masters, and you know, Aaron Pierre is magnificent, Cole Chandler is amazing. We really, really are lucky. James Hawes, who's directing it, you know that first season of Slow Horses was incredible television, and he's bringing all of his skills to the table, so we're feeling good. So yeah, it does seem like Lanterns, as if you couldn't already tell with everything we've learned so far, does seem to be an original story. It's not really inspired off of Supergirl. You know how Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow is clearly adapting that comic. There will be differences, of course, but it's a pretty clear through line of, you know, Supergirl meeting Ruthie and then going on that adventure. Lanterns, or while I think it will have all these different inspirations, I think they're creating like basically a true detective show with a Green Lantern reskin in this DCU world. Now, I know I briefly spoke about Paradise Lost in my previous video, but a tiny tidbit here, or a different quote, if you will, is that Paradise Lost is totally still important, and we're working heavily on it. It just seems to be going pretty well, Gunn revealed during the event, with Safran confirming that the pilot's being written right now. So, despite what you've heard about Waller, you know, whatever else, The Authority, Paradise Lost is still really important, and they're working heavily on it. Like, they're going at it, even to the point of when the pilot's being written right now. They're not giving up on that. I think they really want their iteration of like a political Game of Thrones show set thousands of years ago, but, you know, with Themyscira, the Amazons, the gods, and all of that stuff. But on the DCU video games front, my God, okay, I know there's been some news recently. Again, I'm going to save my thoughts on the whole Wonder Woman cancellation and the studio closures till Friday. But as for DCU video games, we see designs for the projects in their very earliest stages. We talk about those, we talk about what the story might be. We say, well, you know, maybe you want to go this way because we're, you know, planning on maybe doing something with this character, and so forth and so on, and help to deal with that. Safran added, James has always been such an avid gamer. Until now, you've been a little bit busy, but it's been great. And, you know, we've enjoyed it enormously. Everything had been so siloed, and now that's completely broken down. And it's been great because it also applies to consumer products and experiences. And everything that DC touches runs up through us now, which is awesome. And when asked when the first video game would arrive, Gunn said a couple of years from now. But yeah, I mean, we've had some pretty active involvement in some stuff coming up. Safran even confirms that plans to incorporate Superman skins into existing games like Fortnite, which I think everyone just saw coming. But yes, DC video games, of course, it was like a few years away. You know, a good video game does legitimately take 4 to 6 years to make. I mean, look at Baldur's Gate 3, look at recently Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. Amazing game. My God, if anyone else is playing that, shout out to you. I hope that they have some exciting stuff for the DCU, but with their approach that came out of that recent news, it just does seem like they're going to play it very, very safely. So would we really get a question video game, or insert your idea of video game here, when they canceled the Flash video game, the Wonder Woman video game, the Constantine video, like all of these things we're hearing about. But again, full rant on Friday, I guess. Now, last couple of tidbits of the video. Future animated projects, again, from the Nerds of Color here. Please check out their full article. When asked if animated projects like Dynamic Duo will all be family-oriented, Gunn said, no, absolutely not. In fact, one of the things we're talking about right now is very much not a family story that's animated. No. For instance, Creature Commandos is animated, and it's certainly not for little children unless you're a really good parent. Now, yeah, Absolutely. Really intrigued to know what animated projects they're on about there, that they're talking about right now. Maybe this pertains to the one we were talking about earlier that could be being retooled to animation, and that could be The Authority, and that wouldn't really be family friendly, especially if they're going to do animation. I think they would go above and beyond to make that a clusterfuck of an adventure with The Authority. So don't worry, you're going to be getting R-rated animation in the lines of Creature Commandos, but in the movie animated format as well. Now, as for what they know they're doing in the future, like this overarching, larger storytelling or whatever, Safran added that we know where we're headed to for the larger story. And so James makes sure that those building blocks are going to be put in place. And then around that, there's a tremendous amount of latitude in terms of what we do. This kind of harkens back to what I said in my previous video. If I recommend watching it if you haven't already, but like, despite there being all of this talk about, hey, this project's this project and that project is that project, there is a larger story, and as Safran says, they know where they're heading with that. But at the same time, all while those building blocks are being put in place, and Lanterns looks like it's going to be like a major part of that overarching, like, we know where we're going with the larger story to the end game levels of Chapter 1 potentially, there's also a tremendous amount of latitude in terms of, hey, we might do a Sgt Rock story, we might do a Swamp Thing story, we might do a Clayface story as well. So with all that being said, guys, those are the main juicy crumbs, if I do say so myself, that came out, I would say, or rippled out after the initial news dump on Monday. And what I mean by that is I haven't seen a whole bunch of people, not everyone, but a whole bunch of people talking about these finer details. Like, really that are so juicy that they could mean more, as with what we've got into in this video. So there are some other little micro things, but with how long this video is getting, I don't think they're as crazy to talk about as some of the stuff that really interested me in this video. So if you're like, hey, Boba, you forgot this, if I left it out, trust me, I've already seen it, but I just felt like it didn't really need to be talked about, or it was maybe a repeat of the previous video. But as for this video, let me know your thoughts on everything we discussed. This took a long time to probably edit. Me, I ramble a lot, so that's a lot of editing. So if you've got this far, would really appreciate a like. Consider subscribing, of course, for more in-depth news, updates, reviews, and breakdowns just like this. But honestly, I'm just really looking forward to getting into the comment section and seeing what you guys have to say. Maybe you have a completely different take to me on some of the things that I interpreted about the DCU Batman thing and other things like that. But really, really enjoyed talking about this. Again, I plan on doing a news roundup in general in the next couple of days, so look forward to that if you want me to cover some other things that might be out there. But until then, ladies and gentlemen, really appreciate you watching. Thank you so much for your support. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see all of you in the next video. Goodbye.